The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome in, wrestling fans. You are now dialed into the PA Power College Podcast. As Jason Bryant of the Matt Talk Podcast Network said, I'm Tristan Warner, joined by my main man, as always, Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity. Mason, how are we doing today, man?
We're good. First week of October, starting to feel like fall. Feels like wrestling season, man. So I'm excited. We got recruiting commitments all over the place. High school kids are starting to compete again. It's an exciting time. Ready to have some fun.
Yeah, October, hands down, undisputed best month of the year. You got the best weather. You got all kinds of good tasting and smelling pumpkin stuff all around. You got Halloween, one of the best holidays. You got wrestling season starting up for college at least. My birthday, I mean, the list goes on and on. Best month of the year. We got some good topics for you guys coming up this episode. Episode 8 already, hard to believe. But on a more somber note, just to get started today, obviously thoughts and prayers across the country are pouring out in Las Vegas of the senseless mass shooting, the biggest mass shooting in American history, I believe they're saying it is. It was just notified from a Cumberland Valley Youth Wrestling post here on Facebook that local team here in District 3, Shippensburg, their youth wrestling coach, Bill Wolf, and his wife are among two of the victims that were either shot or at least injured in some capacity. His wife's condition seems to be okay, but as of right now, when I'm recording this, Bill's condition is unknown. So obviously we ask all the wrestling community to pour out your thoughts and prayers for Bill Wolf and the Shippensburg Youth Wrestling program.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it all. Thoughts and prayers to everybody affected. I mean, everybody affected out by the tragedy in Las Vegas. Just hope that everybody that's still hanging on out there finds their way through it, and that the families and everybody affected by it, that they can find some way to stay strong and just continue to move forward. So, but hey, let's roll right along. Let's get on into wrestling. Brighten things up a little bit. So, news and notes. We got, like I said earlier, it's recruiting season, man. Things are going nuts with commitments. And I feel like that always happens this time of year. Right when official visits start to happen, kids are taking trips all over the country. I don't know if you don't follow Trent Hidlay on Twitter, give him a follow. His documenting of his trip to Iowa was hilarious.
Didn't quite catch that one. Enlighten us, Mason.
So apparently his flight got delayed. Was supposed to leave, I think, on a Thursday or a Friday night. Flight got delayed the whole way up until the next morning. And, he was kind of live tweeting the whole thing, talking about, this isn't going to mentally break me. We just got to embrace it. And he just, made light of the whole situation, much in the same way that, the same sense of humor that his brothers got on Twitter and everything. So that was entertaining. But, there's commitments all over the place here. So starting off, probably the biggest one as far as Pennsylvania natives go, Justin McCoy, a state champ out of Chestnut Ridge, who's ranked, I think, 5th or 6th in the country by Flow Wrestling. He's headed to the University of Virginia to wrestle for Steve Garland and staff. We've got a pair of guys headed to West Point. Jared McGill, who's a couple-time state place winner, also from Chestnut Ridge. He's headed to West Point. Andrew Wirt from Central Dauphin, who's a couple-time state place winner. He is also headed to West Point. So a couple guys headed into the service. Brandon Meredith, who's a state medalist, took 4th for Springford. He's headed to a lesser-known program, the Penn State program. They do all right for themselves.
They're called the Nittany Lions, right? Is that them? Is that the team you're talking about? They're like blue and white, maybe?
I don't know. That doesn't sound right. So anyway, Dalton Rohrbaugh.
We are lame.
Dad jokes all over the place.
Yeah.
So Dalton Rohrbaugh is a state third out of Springford. Little guy, projected to be
He's Spring Grove. Dalton Rohrbaugh, Spring Grove, out of District 3.
Spring Grove. All right, my fault. That's a tough.
Meredith is Springford, out of District 1. Dalton Rohrbaugh is District 3 kid, Spring Grove.
That's my fault. I probably as I was typing this up, probably got into a roll, and
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you knew that, but you just like you said, you got in a rhythm typing Springford twice in a row. Spell check maybe or autocorrect. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one.
yeah, we're gonna blame technology.
Cheek for that.
So anyway, he projects into a 125 for Lock Haven and Coach Scott Moore out there. There's another Lock Haven commit in here. Luke McGonigal is a state finalist from Clearfield, ranked as a top 10 guy in the country at 182. He's also headed to Lock Haven. So pair of pretty high-level recruits for Coach Scott Moore. Two more guys headed to Pitt. It seems like every week we have more and more guys headed to Pitt. David Crawford, who's an Ohio State champ. He's a bigger guy. He's headed to Pitt, as well as Jack Davis, Wyoming Seminary, who's ranked number 14 in the country at 138. So Pitt is like slowly just taking every recruit at 138 pounds between Matthews, Kemerer, and now Jack Davis. So Pitt's just going to have all 20 kids that are ranked by Flo at 138 at some point, it seems like. Dalton Group, who's a state runner-up from Susquehanna, he's headed to University of Pitt Johnstown. So that's, what are they, D2?
Yeah, they're one of the best D2 teams, at least, historically and lately, too. They always have tough kids. Groups like, I think he's also a 182-pounder, maybe 195. So him and McGonigal, they're obviously not in the same division, AA and AAA here. Group a AA guy, but he's also pretty highly ranked in the country. I think I saw him in the top 10 or 12 on Flow Wrestling. So that's a big pickup for a D2 program like UPJ.
Yeah, that's definitely a really big pickup. For a program like a UP, that'd be a big pickup for any program, but, for a smaller, quote-unquote smaller program, Division II program in UPJ, that's a really high-level recruit for those guys. So, obviously wish the best of luck to all those guys as they continue to move forward and represent PA Power at the next level. Something I saw that I thought was interesting, this has nothing to do with recruiting, but so David Taylor now has his own club and training center in State College. Have you seen this?
No, I didn't see that either.
Yeah, so if you go check out, I saw it on Twitter. I don't remember if it was his Twitter or what it was, but yeah, he's got a whole Magic Man complex now.
I wonder where and what the motivation is behind this.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering, because
almost as if it's a rival to NLWC, or does it work in conjunction with Nittany Lion, or do you have any details on that?
No, because I literally just saw this today. So yeah, if you go to David Taylor's Twitter, it's like his pinned tweet. The M2 Training Center is ready to roll. They've got, I don't know, I guess they're holding workouts now. So that's, yeah, I thought that was interesting. And again, I just haven't had time to really dive into the details of it, but it doesn't seem like it's working in conjunction with the NLWC. I don't know. Who knows? But I just thought that was something that was interesting. That was worth noting. Obviously Taylor, a Penn State alum and everything, still lives and trains in State College. So. Yeah, I think that's all we got for news and notes right now. Staying in State College, preview of 174 next season. There's this guy who he won a couple of matches in March. He's got a little bit of a history of when and when it matters most. Mark Hall, Penn State's 174. Obviously, last year gets pulled out of red shirt halfway through the year. Wins the scuffle while still in red shirt, gets pulled out of red shirt, Big Ten runner-up, national champ, kid that seemingly has literally won everything under the sun. So, you got to start with Mark Hall. He's got a chance. Obviously, it's still very early. He's only through his freshman season, but got himself a chance to win all four. Then you move on to Ryan Price out of Lehigh, finished in the round of 12 last year. Price was a guy that, I know his NCAA tournament didn't go exactly how he wanted it to. Lost a tough one to Alex Meyer on Thursday night. Price came in as the 6th seed. Meyer would have been, I think the 11, because the seeds add to 17 Thursday night. So, he lost a tough one to Meyer, and then, what was the kid from Michigan? There's somebody more.
Amin.
Yeah. So, Price beat Amin pretty soundly in the dual meet during the season, and Amin just got on
Amin had the tournament of his life. 4th place finish as a redshirt freshman. That kid's tough.
That kid just caught fire.
I was just gonna say, when you talk about Ryan Price, first of all, we've talked about him multiple times as being one of the best, if not the best, kid to follow on Twitter. So props to him for that. But also, this kid we've also talked about in a few different circumstances about the caliber of the amount of kids that he's either beaten or nearly beaten, and he's even made jokes about this about himself. Mason, as a big Lehigh fan, I'm pretty sure this happened. I'm pretty sure you were probably pretty frazzled watching this. I'm pretty sure Price had a lead, and it looked like he was going to beat Mark Hall at the Southern Scuffle, who obviously went on to win the NCAA title, and got pinned late in the match. And then I think the exact same scenario happened with Real Buto later in the season in a duel against Cornell, where Price had a lead late and got pinned as well.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So we're seeing what he's capable of if he can just finish the match. He's arguably a national title contender in my mind.
Well,
at this weight.
I don't think there's any question. He had a lead on the guy that went on to win a national title. Had a lead on Hall with 45 seconds to wrestle in that match. So, and that's not to say that Price can't finish matches, man. He beat Zach Epperly, who was the number 2 guy in the country at the time he beat him. He pounded Casey Kent a couple of times, who was a returning All-American. Like I said, he had a really sound victory over Amin in the duel. Both matches with Robuto, the one he got defensive pinned in the dual meet, Price was either up by 1 or it was a tie match at the time that happened. And then in EIWA finals, he lost, I think, a 1-point match. So Price is a guy, I think he majored Ethan Ramos from North Carolina at the Scuffle. I'm pretty sure he majored Taylor Lujan from Northern Iowa at the Scuffle. So Price is a guy, like you said, that's proven that he can compete at the very highest level. So it'll, and obviously as a guy, that's one of my former teammates and everything. Price is a guy that I always enjoy watching, and I'm excited to see what he does this coming year. Up in the northwestern corner of the state, up at Edinburgh, Ty Shuffstall was an NCAA qualifier last year for Edinburgh. I believe he went 1-2 at the national tournament, so I'm sure the Fighting Scots up there, they're expecting to get even more out of him next season, see if he can make a deep run into the tournament. Caleb Young is a Punxsutawney native, so he's a freshman out at Iowa. He's already ranked in the top 20 in the country by Flow Wrestling. I think he's like 19th or 20th. So, the Hawkeyes are going to have a pair of Pennsylvania natives out there in their lineup with Mikey Kemerer, obviously at 157, who we're going to talk to a little bit later. I think, it's an interview I think you guys will enjoy. But, we got Kemerer at 57, and then Caleb Young up at 184. And then
174.
74, I'm sorry.
And interestingly, Caleb Young, similar to Michael Kemerer's circumstance 2 seasons ago, or at least last season, where we saw Caleb Young wrestle his entire redshirt season at 165, but with Marinelli being the superstar that he is and pretty much manning the 165 weight, looks like Young is going to have to go up, maybe an undersized 174-pounder, maybe not, I'm not sure, but it just seems like 65 was probably his ideal weight, and he's probably going up to 74 more because of Marinelli holding that slot at 165, kind of similar to Michael Kemerer having to go up to 57. Obviously worked out great for him, and not saying that he was too small for the weight or anything by any stretch, but at least when Sorensen was at 49 2 seasons ago and Kemerer took his redshirt year, he did wrestle at 149. And then I know there was some speculation when he came in last year when he was up at 157 if Kemerer will be big enough for the weight class, and he obviously proved he was. But interesting to see how Young fills out at 174.
Yeah, and Young's still, not to have a play on...
Still young.
But yeah, he is. He's still young, so he's definitely, there's no way that at age 19, that he's done growing and that he doesn't have room to continue to fill out. So I'm sure, I mean, you know how it is, man. You get on a Division I weight program, you can build in a hurry.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that once the decision was made that he was moving up to 74, and like you said, Marinelli's kind of the flag bearer for that class of Iowa's. So I would assume that it was a decision was made fairly early on in the process that Caleb Young was going to move up to 74. And Marinelli was going to man the 65 spot. So
he's probably had a couple months notice to get on the weights and get big. So yeah, he's probably filled out for the weight class.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, even if he's a little bit undersized when the season starts, there's still a long time between November 1st and March.
I mean, to this day, a lot of people say Mark Hall's an undersized 174-pounder, and look what he did. So
yeah, that is true. He's not a very big 74 either.
Yeah, that's what I meant. If I didn't say that, I meant 174.
No, you did. I'm just saying in general.
Oh, okay.
He just, but that's, you know what that is? That right there is proof that you don't have to cut massive amounts of weight. If you're good, you're good.
Yep, that's right.
I think that honestly is I think that's something that I wish more people really understood and held that belief. Especially at the developmental stages of wrestling, I feel like there's way too much cutting weight going on. But anyway, not to dive down into the rabbit hole too much. So one of the cool things that always goes on in October every year, this kind of the kickoff for the season, if you will, is the NWCA All-Star Classic. So as each guy, so for anybody that's not familiar with it, every year, right, they always have it literally the day before official competition starts. So, I was in it my last 3 years of college. So, say competition starts on November 1st. They would wrestle on Halloween on October 31st. So the weigh-in and actually the weigh-in does count, which is kind of annoying, but so it doesn't count on your record or anything, so nobody's records or such are affected. But you go out and they try to get the two highest ranked guys in the country at each weight to just go out and scrap to kick the season off and get everybody excited to roll right on into wrestling season. So as the NWCA reaches out to each individual competitor to come be part of it, as soon as each guy agrees, they release them. So some of the guys have been released. Those with Pennsylvania ties include, we already talked about Mark Hall, so defending national champ at 174. Mark Hall will be there. Nick Nevels is another Penn State guy. He took 5th?
Yep, 5th.
Yeah.
Heavyweight.
So Nick Nevels, a returning All-American, took 5th at heavyweight last year. He will be there, as well as defending national champ, Pennsylvania native, the man, the myth, the legend, that is Darian Cruz. He'll be there at 125. So we've got at least 3 guys with Pennsylvania ties as of the time we're recording this. Obviously would not surprise me in the least to see more than that. Maybe to see a guy like a Mikey Kemerer end up in the All-Star Classic. So that's always exciting.
Have their opponents been announced yet?
I don't think so.
When will those be announced?
They kind of, so at least when I was part of it, basically what they do is the NWCA will literally send an email or just call the head coach at whatever school it is. So for Hall, so for Mark Hall and Nick Nevels, they'll just call Kale or somebody on that staff and say, hey, we would like for Mark and Nick and whoever else to be part of the All-Star Dual Meet this year. The matchup we have in mind would be him wrestling whoever, right? They always have a matchup in mind. So as soon as that guy agrees, they email you over a form, you sign it, you fill the whole thing out and sign it and fax it back to them. And once you're officially locked in, that's when they release the competitor. So some matchups get released super, super early if both guys commit super early. And then I know 1 year for me, I was gonna wrestle Clark from Iowa, and he got hurt, and there was this whole big runaround, and it took, I didn't know who I was wrestling until like 2 weeks before the duel.
Still pretty good notice, 2 weeks.
Yeah, but like every other matchup had been announced at least a week before then. So competitors right now for the men's, because they have women's freestyle matches and everything else along with this. Guys that have been announced: Seth Gross at 133, national runner-up for South Dakota State. Jared Hott, a two-time All-American for Virginia Tech at 197. Talked about Darian Cruz. Matt Kolodzik. That'll be cool for Kolodzik because the duel is actually at Princeton. So it'll be cool for Kolodzik to wrestle in his home gym for that. So he's a returning All-American for Princeton. Talked about Mark Hall. Talked about Nick Nevels. Chad Walsh, a two-time All-American from Ryder at 165. Who?
That's also cool because Ryder is like a 15-minute drive from Princeton, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, a lot.
Pretty much a home match for him as well.
Yeah, a lot of. And he's a Jersey native too, so that'll be. I'm sure that'll be cool for him. You would have to believe he'll have a pretty good cheering section, right?
Yeah, you'd have to think so. Him and Kolodzik both. Kolodzik, even though his family's from Ohio, he did his wrestling at Blair, so he's no stranger to New Jersey wrestling.
No, not at all. Plus, anytime Chad Walsh is on the mat, it's awesome just because you never know what's gonna happen. So, anyway, Drew Foster from Northern Iowa, a returning All-American. He is in at 184. He's also... Foster's the one that rocked the Jeff Gordon shirt, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so...
The most flamboyant dress code of the NCAA tournament, which landed him the ultimate prize of winning my Twitter bracket poll, whatever you want to call it. Drew Foster came away on top with the Croc Jeff Gordon t-shirt combo on the podium. So not only did he run away with some hardware for becoming a Division I All-American, but he also took the Twitter prize of being named the wrestler with the most swag at the NCAA tournament. So props to Drew Foster.
And the last one that's been announced is Kevin Jack. He's a couple-time All-American out of North Carolina State, so he'll be in the Classic at 141. So got a pretty good list of guys so far. I'm just really excited. It's always an awesome event to see. There's so many great matches. If you go back over the years with matches like Tony Ramos bumping up to wrestle Devin Carter, Stieber bumping up to wrestle Kendrick Maple, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I remember one of the craziest ones. Do you remember when Wilps Matt Wilps just body locked and decked Quentin Wright that night?
I don't remember that. I actually have no recollection of that whatsoever.
Yeah, it was so Quentin's 5th year. It was the only year he wrestled at 97. And
He won it too, we should add.
Well, yeah.
Pretty handily beat Dustin Kilgore, who's an absolute Hulk of a man, in the finals too, so
yeah, that was
that hearing that even makes it hard to believe for me that happened.
That was one of the most, not that I expected Quentin and Kilgore to be a pretty good match, and I wasn't going to be surprised one way or the other. Yeah,
exactly.
But I did not expect Quentin to blow him out like that,
or to take him down like 3 times with the same move.
Yep,
an underhook throw by single.
Yep, but yeah, Quentin and Wilps wrestled in the All-Star duel, and I think part of it was Quentin. We talked about how you can, you got to build into weight classes, right? Because Ruth had moved up, their whole line, Penn State's entire lineup had shifted up. So Ed had moved up to 84, Quentin had shifted up to 97, and I don't think he had completely built into 97 at the time the All-Star duel took place. But I don't remember what exactly.
Not to mention, Wilps is just built like a. He's built like a bigger version of Shoot from Vision Quest.
He is enormous.
Enormous, yep.
So, and I forget what exactly the situation was. I want to say Quentin tried to inside trip him, and Wilps just went straight Big Brother and went, no, and clamped him and stuck him.
That sounds about right. Quentin did have a pretty nasty inside trip, so I could see him trying that.
Yeah,
against someone that size, maybe you make one wrong step, you're a little off balance, and yeah, you're not taking that guy with you.
No. So, yeah, the All-Star duel always has some great matchups, some pretty wild results. It'll be a great event, you know.
Are you a two-time national duel victor? Is that right?
No.
Or did you lose both or 1 and 1?
I was in 3 of them. I won my first.
3.
I was in 3 of them. I
thought you wrestled Shop twice.
I did, and then I wrestled Rossi Bruno my 3rd time.
Okay, let's hear your stats.
1 and 2.
Okay, the 1 win over Bruno or Shop?
Shop. I won the first one. I started out good, and then it went downhill from there. I beat AJ the first time. I think like 5-2 or something like that, and then the second one was in Philly, and I lost to AJ. I got taken down right in the last like 10 or 15 seconds to lose 4-2.
Classic Mason.
And then I know. And then Bruno got.
Hey, if you're gonna lose, at least lose to a PA kid.
Yeah.
PA power.
And then Bruno, I got beat in overtime. He got in on a shot, and I went to standing funk. And did you ever just completely whiff on a standing funk?
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
Yeah, that happened. I went to attack an ankle and just completely missed what I was aiming at, and was like, okay, well, this match is over. That was
good experience, though, right?
That was the events are awesome. They do a great job of taking care of the athletes and the coaches as far as travel accommodations. The hotel that they put you up in, the gear you get is awesome. When I was in it, they partnered with Rudis, and we ended up with just an absurd amount of Rudis gear, like multiple sets of t-shirts and shorts. The singlets they give you are always pretty cool. And one of the nice things about the singlets too is if you're a guy that wrestles freestyle, they have a red and a blue team, so you can use them for freestyle stuff. I
always stuck to my Scooby-Doo singlet. I was loyal to Wayne Danger, but if you're into that kind of thing.
How are you going to wear... You can't wear the Scooby singlet in freestyle. It's not red or...
I did it.
It's not red or... I
did it.
I
was red.
That does not... Well, I guess you could...
It's like a burnt orange Scooby-Doo color, so...
Yeah, you could pull that off. I can see that.
You get away with it.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, the event's awesome. Nothing but awesome things to say about the NWCA and the way they take care of those athletes. And actually, speaking of the NWCA, one other piece of news and I don't know how this slipped my mind to start. I'm going to put that one squarely on my shoulders. Got to send our condolences out to the family and everybody surrounding John Harmon, who, for those of you who don't know John Harmon, I believe he's a member of the NWCA Hall of Fame, but he was a huge NWCA supporter. He was a huge Lehigh supporter. Just a generally great human being, a historian, a wrestling historian, really just the consummate wrestling fan. If you haven't read the write-up on him, take some time, go onto the NWCA site and read the write-up about his passing. The wrestling community really lost a great person in John Harmon. So, while we're on the topic of the NWCA All-Star Duel, I realize it's a bit of a somber note, but just got to send condolences out to the Harmon family and all those surrounding him.
Yeah, well said, Mason. There are definitely a couple of shout-outs we had to give on that note. But moving forward here with more of our wrestling topics, schedules are being released right and left. Most of the teams, I would say by now, have their schedule out, or at least it's known in some capacity, even if it's not public yet. Mason, you can dive into this a little more by team, but probably the one we are both most excited about. You're a Lehigh guy, even though I didn't go there. I'm a big Penn State fan, lifelong. Penn State versus Lehigh at the new center, right? The PPL Center.
Yeah, so
that one's coming up December 3rd, I think. Already got tickets for it, so pretty excited for that one.
Yeah, so the PPL Center is it's a hockey arena. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been to the Giants Center in some capacity. It's a lot like the Giants Center. The PPL Center, I think, was built in like 2014, so it's still brand new. It's in Allentown, which is about 15-20 minutes away from Lehigh campus. It's home to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, which are a minor league affiliate of the Flyers. So It's a gorgeous arena. That's a dual meet as far as wrestling in the PPL Center. I know that's something that Coach Santoro and all those guys, they've been working on trying to make that happen for a few years now. That started out as a thought when I was probably in my third or fourth year. So it's pretty cool to see that come to fruition, especially against Penn State. That's as far as rankings and matchups and everything goes, that's the biggest in-state dual meet that we have. So, it only makes sense that it would be on a big stage, right?
Yeah, exactly. And moving forward, also Penn State wrestles Iowa this year at the Bryce Jordan Center. So that's another big one here in Pennsylvania. 2 huge dual meets that will probably attract huge crowds going down right here in Pennsylvania, right in our home state.
Yeah, those will both be a ton of fun. Just to run through some other highlight dual meets for each program. So Edinboro, I don't know if this was just sheer dumb luck or if this was intentional, but the road schedule that Edinboro has is going to be brutal. They got to go to Lehigh, they got to go to Oklahoma State, they got to go to Oklahoma. They wrestle, and then as far as in-state, fellow PSAC schools, they got to go to Clarion and Lock Haven. So they've got 3 road duels against, Lehigh, Oak State, and Oklahoma that are all 3, obviously, very high-profile programs, as is Edinboro. So those that Edinboro team, by the time they roll into nationals, they will be tried and true.
Seasoned veterans
by
that time.
Although I feel like that's Edinboro's MO. Like, they wrestle a really good schedule. They always have at least, one dual meet a year where they bring, an Iowa or an Oklahoma State into Macomb Fieldhouse,
Yeah, they do. They always find a way to attract some big teams in there. Last year, I think, when they had Oklahoma State, that was at home, right? I think that's when Austin Matthews pinned Chandler Rogers.
Yep.
Saw that video right on the plaid mat there. So.
Yeah, the plaid mat, one of the best marketing tools in all of college wrestling.
Yeah, and we talked about that on a couple podcasts ago. It might have been the one where we interviewed Mitchell Port, so we don't have to get too far into that. But, we definitely gave Edinboro their credit for their swag. Yeah,
so fellow PSAC school, Clarion, they go to Pitt on December 16th, so that'll be there'll be some good matches in there. Maybe see a Nixon at a Brock Zackrell match, couple of lefties going at it. That'll be a good scrap. Lock Haven comes to town on February 11th. Moving on, Lehigh schedule. Michigan comes into Lehigh on November 19th, so maybe see a Price Amin rematch. There will be some pretty good matches in there. I know Pantaleo is coming off a red shirt for the Wolverines, so he'll be, I think, 157. See him wrestle maybe Cole Walter could be a pretty good match. Because Massa's up at 65, right?
Yeah.
And you can see Massa.
Pantaleo's been a 49-pounder his whole career. If you heard he's going up to 57, that could be, but I don't know.
Oh, I
thought Brian Murphy had another year left.
Maybe.
I could be wrong.
For some reason, I thought Pantaleo was moving up, but I could have just made that up in my head. So, hey, regardless, Pantaleo would be a fun guy to watch. But Massa at 65 means we could very well be in for Massa Cutler, which would be awesome. That just, clicked in my head. So that could be a fun one. Massa Cutler and Price Amin both would be huge matches. Both a match between top 10 guys, so it's always...
Lehigh's got some interesting matches on here. They wrestle at Penn and Drexel, which is convenient because the campuses are literally across the street.
Yep.
On December 10th. And then they go to Virginia Tech on January 26th. I'm sure there's bound to be some good matches in that one. Both those teams are always good. Mm-hmm. And then Lehigh is going all the way out to Arizona State on February 9th, which Price against Valencia. That just was the first thing that came to my head when I saw that. I'm sure there's going to be some good matchups there. And then Lehigh has Pitt at home on February 18th. That's cutting pretty late into the year. That's got to be probably their last dual meet, I would think, because that's getting pretty close to conference time.
Yeah, so... Yeah, probably. I don't know what the situation is with the national duels this year, if they're doing, the bowl series kind of deal again, or... I don't know. Do you have any information on that?
No, I don't. We're going to get in here in just a minute into some proposed rule changes about that, and that potential changes that could be coming in the future to the NWCA duels and really just the college wrestling season in general. But we really don't know that. Really, I would doubt that these would come into effect this season. I'm sure that's pretty much impossible. But at least in the future, they could happen. But as for what happens this year, I'm not sure. From what I heard, it could be even canceled altogether, like as in no NWCA duels.
Oh.
If I remember correctly. Or like some kind of makeshift effort to put it together, but I don't know. Who
knows? To wrap up the schedules, though, Penn State, we already talked about the Iowa duel. Ohio State comes into town. I believe that one's in the Bryce Jordan Center too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
So Ohio State comes to the Bryce Jordan Center on February 3rd. That dual meet is just going to be bonkers. There's world medals, and you got an Olympic champ in Kyle Snyder, and you got Mark Hall, who's won world titles at every age level. And that dual meet, it's just going to be insanity. Then a week later, Iowa comes to the Bryce Jordan Center, so not a bad 8-day span there for Penn State wrestling. Wrestle Minnesota on January 26th. They go to Rutgers on January 28th, which will be a pretty good...
Has a lot more of a storyline behind it now than a Penn State-Rutgers duel in the past would. We'll just leave it at that.
Exactly. There will be some great matchups in there. You know, Richie Lewis is back in the lineup for Rutgers. Ashnault. But the whole situation on 125, that'll be very interesting to see. It would be even more interesting if it was in Happy Valley, to see how everybody reacted to it, but we've talked enough about that in previous episodes. So, Drexel was the last schedule that, when I did this write-up here, that they had released. Drexel, one of them that I thought was interesting, they're going to SIUE, Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, which is where Jeremy Spates is coaching now. So they go to SIUE on November 10th. They go to Iowa State on November 12th, so that'll be quite the little swing from Edwardsville to Iowa State. And then they do the classic walk across the street dual meet against Penn on February 17th. How nice would that be, by the way, to have they wrestle Penn at home, but...
Gotta be pretty nice for the athletic department budget, I'll say that. You don't really have to worry about transportation or lodging or anything like that. You pretty much just literally put your tennis shoes on and walk down the street or hop on the bus and go for a 2-minute ride. Yeah,
you literally... to have a quote-unquote away duel that you walk 2 blocks for, you can't beat that. That would be awesome.
There's other scenarios, I should say. Duke, UNC are pretty close by, but we're still talking probably, I'm not too familiar with that area, but 15 minutes maybe, 10 minutes, but this is literally across the street, so...
Yeah, so that's convenient for everybody, and I actually think in the last episode that Coach Slay mentioned that a little bit, but... because those two programs actually work together with the Pennsylvania RTC, so convenient for everybody. So that's pretty much all we got for schedules. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that.
No, these obviously aren't the full schedules. You can go online to their respective athletic websites and check out their full schedules, but these were just kind of the highlights we wanted to throw out, or duels that stood out to us, or just duels that were inner Pennsylvania matchups, so easily accessible for the fans. But Mason, one thing we really wanted to talk about this episode, you've probably seen it popping up on Facebook or on social media, people sharing it. The proposed rule changes for college wrestling, really the whole college wrestling season and the landscape, maybe is the best way to put it. What do you got for us on this, Mason?
So these proposed rule changes, I don't even know where to start. So the entire season shifts back.
Let's start by saying that this isn't anything that's been voted on for sure, right? This isn't anything that's guaranteed to happen, but these are more of proposed changes that could go into effect if voted upon.
So here...
Not entirely sure that these will happen, but these are just ideas that are being thrown around.
So what happened...
And are gaining momentum.
Yes. So what happened was, I think it was called the Blue Ribbon Task Committee or something of that nature. And it was comprised of guys like Tom Ryan, Troy Nickerson, who's the head coach at Northern Colorado. I'm sure a lot of people remember him winning a national title, being a 4-time All-American at Cornell. So, of very bright wrestling minds, and they went, and however many members of this committee there were, they went behind closed doors, and they did their thing, and the idea being, what can we do? How can we change things to better promote our sport, to better grow our sport, to set the sport and the athletes and the universities, everybody up for a more successful situation, right? Fostering the growth of the sport. So the plan that they came out with, the season gets pushed back, and official practice, which right now starts October 10th, I think. It's like October 5th, October 10th.
Ish.
It's not, what is
Columbus Day-ish.
Yeah, it's next Tuesday. It's October 10th. So official practice slides back a month, the start of it. Official competition slides back about 2 months. It goes from, right now it's November 1st. I believe it's like right at the start of November. I don't know if it's the 1st, but it goes from the very beginning of November to the first competition would be during the break between semesters, which means, one of the ideas there is kids aren't competing during finals. They can focus more on academics, which I will say, competing during finals sucks. Especially going to, and I don't mean this as a slight to any other school, but, going to a school like Lehigh where the academics are as intense as they are, the running joke about the EIWA is it's the nerd conference, right? Going to a school like Lehigh, and then and then you get into the Ivies and stuff like that. When you never actually compete during the time span the finals is going on, but you're still kind of in that mode, and it makes life hard, right? I mean, you dealt with it at Old Dominion. It makes life very difficult. That's why the first semester is harder than the second semester.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just in general, I would say, I mean, I'm probably jumping the gun on this because you haven't fully explained it yet, but I think in my opinion, having gone through it, the college wrestling season is just too long. Somebody once told me, pretty sure somebody who knew what they were talking about, told me that they were comparing wrestling to baseball, and they said that college baseball was the sport where you had the most competitions in the least amount of time, and wrestling was the total opposite, where you had the least amount of competitions in the most amount of time.
Yep. Basically,
the season is like November to March, but you really start in September with preseason. I mean, it seems like it's like 6, 7, 8 months long, and you're just training and not competing that much. So you really just wear yourself down. I mean, my senior year, a couple times it happened, but my senior year, my body literally fell apart. Had a couple torn ligaments and stuff midway through the year or toward the end, and it just, the season I feel like is just too long for the amount of competitions that there are. So I think this is a good rule change in terms of trying to cut down the amount of competition. The only thing that is a little confusing to me is why they would still start practice on November 10th but not compete until January. I almost feel like, why not just start practice in December? Like, why do you need the extra 2 months of practice? It basically seems like the season is staying the same length, but it's just going to be that much more practice and even less competitions. I don't know. Maybe you can answer that.
I'm not completely clear on that either, to be honest with you. Not to mention, you're still going to spend a lot of time there over break. So, you don't...
And people might disagree with me on this, but maybe it's different in other sports. Like in football, I feel like you practice, but it's a lot of non-contact practice, and then when you get in the game, that's when you really get beat up. I feel like in wrestling, at least from my experience, I mean, I did get hurt in matches every now and then, but I feel like in general, you wrestle a match, and then, you get like a day off after, you get the rest of that day off. I almost feel like you get hurt, or not even hurt, but you get more worn down in practice. Sometimes you're practicing 2-3 times a day, and when that's going on for months and months in between competition, I almost feel like you're getting more worn down from the practices than you are from the 7-minute match. So I like the idea of cutting down the season, but I almost feel like the practice should be cut down with it in unison. But I don't know. We'll see.
No, I completely agree. So, anyway, competition would start during the break between semesters. Now, here's where it really gets interesting. That makes it a one-semester sport. I am a huge believer. I think it should be a one-semester sport. I think that is far better for the student-athletes. Bridging between semesters, it gets to be a lot for a lot of different reasons. I discussed competing during finals and everything already, so I think a one-semester sport makes a lot more sense. Not to mention, if they move the NCAA's back, you don't directly go head-to-head with March Madness as far as viewership goes, which I think would make a ton of sense. But so anyway, the first part of the season would consist of dual meets and tournaments, and then NCAA's the individual national tournament would still be in March, right? It's still at the same time. This is where it gets wacky. Then, the second half of the season is nothing but dual meets, which culminates in a 2-weekend, 16-team dual meet tournament to decide the national team title. Now,
And this would be taking place in April, is that correct?
Yes, and it takes place in late April, the last couple weekends of April.
So we're starting practice on November 10th, and where I just said that going all the way to mid-March for NCAA's is a long season, now we're going all the way to late April.
Yeah, well, it ends up being the same length, because right now it starts in October and ends competition-wise. No.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Practice does start a month later. Okay.
Yeah, everything slides a month.
I'm used to seeing November 10th as the first competition date, but this would be the first practice date, so I see. It's a sliding scale here. Okay, so we're not making the season any longer, at least. It's staying about the same with less competition, so it's still a better thing than we have going on right now.
Yeah. So it just pushes it back more towards being a one-semester sport. So the dual meet championship, it's 2 weekends, 16 teams. The 16-team field consists of conference champions as well as at-large selections. So not unlike the way March Madness works. You win your conference, you get in, and then the bracket fills with other at-large selections. The first weekend, the top 8 seeds will host duels the first weekend. So the first 2 rounds, the round of 16 and then the round of 8, all takes place in the first weekend. So those 2 rounds take place, which gets them to the semis, right? So the second weekend, which is the final weekend of the season, you have the Final Four. The top remaining seed hosts the Final Four. And those 2 dual meets take place, and that's your national team title. So the one thing I'm not 100% clear on, and I read the press release, and maybe I would just have to reread it, but are they awarding a team trophy in March for points at the individual tournament?
That's what I was curious too, and I would guess you'd almost have to, because if you think about how the high schools do their team states, like when they implemented those in the early 2000s, I think it was, for Pennsylvania, where they did the team state tournament, they still award an individual team, like a team trophy at the individual tournament too. So I almost feel like you have to. If not, it's like, I don't know, like everyone's going to be wondering who's scoring the most team points. But maybe if this gets rolling enough to the point where this is the only thing people care about in terms of a team trophy, then maybe that becomes obsolete. But the one other thing I wanted to throw out while I'm talking about the team states thing is, this will be an interesting change if it does come true, because I feel like it'll be harder for Pennsylvania fans to adapt to than maybe fans in like the Midwest, because you know how states in the Midwest and some other places in high school level, they do their high school season the same way, where they have their individual state tournament first and then they wrestle their team state tournament afterward, which has always been just bewilders me in my head as a Pennsylvania fan. We always have our team stuff first, knock that out of the way, and then your season culminates with the individual state tournament. If you win on Saturday night, you're a state champ and your season's over. Like, that's how it's always been. These other states don't do it that way, and it just blows my mind how you can have a team tournament after you just became a state champ and, like, maybe go out and lose to the same kid you just beat, and now, like, your state title seems less worthy. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to say on that. It could be a little iffy for me, at least, to adapt to, knowing that you could be an NCAA champ on Saturday night at the big dance, and then a couple weeks later you got to keep wrestling, and you might lose. You might have your reputation not tarnished, but lessened. I don't know if you share that at all.
No, I agree. I think the only thing I would change about this, to be honest, to be honest with you, is I would flip them. So I
agree. I would do the team first.
I would make the dual meet part first and then individual second.
The only argument I can see where the way they have it right now would make sense is that they want to knock out the individual champs first, because you don't want to say it, you don't wish it upon anyone, but if this 16-man duel thing is going on, at least somebody somewhere is going to get hurt, or something's going to happen, their season's going to get affected, and then they're always going to be left to wonder what could they have done in the individual tournament. So I get that, at least, where you want to try to, crown the individual best guy at each weight first, and then the team thing maybe is a little bit less important, more just because wrestling is an individual sport. But then again, the way this is being set up, it almost seems like we're trying to shift the focus to make this more of a team sport, more team aspect.
So that's an interesting thing you said there too. You said wrestling's an individual sport, and I'm not saying that I disagree. I feel like this is a conversation that always kind of goes back and forth as to if wrestling is an individual or a team sport. It's really interesting to me because it's got such great elements of both, right? Because in one aspect, obviously you can go win a national title out of a program that will never compete to win a team title, so man, it's probably been 10 years now, but Derek Moore was a good example who, by the way, if you ever get bored and want to go dig up a match on YouTube, go watch the Derek Moore-Ryan Lang national final. That's one of the only times I've ever seen somebody get teched in the national finals. It was ridiculous. But
yeah, that was unreal.
Yeah, he just got, he
dominant on top.
He took Lang down, put boots in, and it was like, holy smokes, it just got out of control. But anyway, Moore was from... was it Baker?
Cal Davis.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because they don't even have a program anymore.
Yep.
So, that's a program that obviously now, unfortunately, can't compete. Period. But that was a program that realistically was never going to be one that competed to win a national title. Certainly not in that time frame. And Moore goes out and wins a national title, because he did everything right on his end. The flip side of it is you get, those Penn State kids, constantly chasing bonus points. Or if you go a few years back to that Minnesota team that didn't have a single national finalist, but All-American all 10 and won a team title, right? That's a great example of, that they wrestled as a team. Those guys were wrestling for something bigger than themselves. You know what I mean? They were wrestling to win a team national title. So it's always really interesting to me, and I agree. I think in the end it does come down to the fact that it's an individual sport. You control your own destiny. You don't have to rely on anybody else around you when you go compete to achieve, to go win a national title. But I think it does have awesome elements of both. Joining us now, all the way from Iowa City, is a Pennsylvania high school legend and a kid that's building himself into one of the legends on the college level. Mikey Kemerer was a high school state champ, was already a Division I All-American as a freshman. He took third for the Hawkeyes, and I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that he's trying to build on that from here. So, Mikey, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be on.
So, I guess the first question is, Tristan and I actually talked about preseason life and how much it beats you up. How's preseason been out there? How are things going out there, both for you individually and, for the Hawks? I know Spencer Lee's out there with you now. You've got at least one more familiar face to go on yourself and with Caleb Young as Pennsylvania guys. So how are things?
Yeah, everything's good. Just, like we talked about preseason, it's getting that body back into shape and doing a lot more running probably than most wrestlers are used to. So definitely feeling that, but it's good. Always good to get that running shape. And then, yeah, it's good. We've got, looks like a young team this year, which is good though. It's exciting. Lost a lot of seniors last year, but then, yeah, it's good. Spencer's out here, and then we got Caleb Young, PA guy, and Max Mirren too. So, yeah, it's good. All of us, year after year after year, having those PA guys out there, it's been awesome.
Mikey, did you guys kind of plan that, or was that something that you guys all, like talked about, or like when they came on the recruiting trips, was that something you kept in mind to try to kind of reform like a pipeline from Pennsylvania to Iowa, or did that kind of just happen on its own?
Yeah, I mean, there was always a good relationship with coaches here at Iowa and our Young Guns coaches. So, I mean, Jody Stripmatter, obviously wrestling at Iowa. And then, so I think that they got to see some of the guys from Young Guns wrestle, and they really liked the way the guys in our room wrestle. And then, once those guys came out here, I mean, it just helps. I mean, I was the first one out here, but actually Caleb Young committed a couple weeks before I did. So, and I mean, I kind of wanted to leave the decision up to, leave that out of it, but that's definitely nice. I mean, when I decided to go there, knowing that he was going to be there, and then, now me and Caleb out here, and then Max Murin and Spencer joining us as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say that's definitely, got to be nice for those guys to have. But yeah, I would say they just, I guess, like the way us Young Guns guys wrestled.
What's it been like, obviously growing up as a Pennsylvania kid, and I know that having spent time, having spent time with Jody in the Young Guns room, you guys aren't as opposed to Iowa as much as a lot of Pennsylvania people are, but what has it been like going from Pennsylvania, where there aren't a whole lot of Iowa wrestling fans, and then getting yourself out there through your visits, and then now being on the complete other side of that rivalry? What's that has that been weird at all, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because, I mean, I was committed my whole senior year and going to Iowa, and I mean, even kids from my school or whatever, it's kind of like, Iowa, that's such a random place in the middle of nowhere. And obviously in the wrestling world, Iowa wrestling, I mean, it's no secret. I mean, it's kind of, people either love them or hate them. So I don't know. It's just different because I guess going from where a lot of people hate Iowa to now out in Iowa, I mean, being in Iowa City, I mean, Iowa wrestling is such a big thing out here, and it's crazy how many people follow it. I guess it's just a big part of the culture out here. So yeah, I mean, it's really just different going from a place where, like I said, people either loved Iowa or hate Iowa. And I mean, there's definitely not as many Iowa fans in Pennsylvania, so it kind of got the other side of it. But yeah, I mean, it's been cool. I mean, I kind of like seeing both sides of it.
Switching gears a little bit, Mikey, we wanted to talk about your season last year. So you came in as a redshirt freshman, obviously made it to NCAA's number 2 seed, and ended up finishing third at 157 as a redshirt freshman. Pretty impressive. Was that kind of your expectation to come in as a redshirt freshman and perform that well, or did you almost surprise yourself a little bit, or what was just your overall reflection on how your redshirt freshman season went?
Yeah. I mean, as far as going into the year, I just kind of, told myself I'm not going to think about, where I'm ranked, who I'm wrestling, all that stuff. I was just like, I'm gonna work hard in the room every day, and then I'm gonna go wrestle this match, whatever the match was that was in front of me. If we had a duel or whatever it was, just preparing for that. So I mean, I didn't really think like, oh, I got to beat this guy and this guy and this guy to end up here. It was really just kind of a, day by day, just doing what I had to do. I mean, obviously, every time I stepped on the mat, I wanted to win. So, yeah, I mean, I expected to win, but at the same time, I don't think I really went into it thinking too much big picture. It's just, I'm going to go out, wrestle hard, and wrestle to win this match and score points. So overall, I mean, it was a good experience, but, I mean, obviously the goal was to win it. So looking forward to this year. That's the goal. But like I said, one match at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the national tournament, you lose a tough one in the quarters. Obviously, never one you expect to lose or anything like that. But one of the things that I was the most impressed with walking away after having watched you compete that whole weekend as someone who'd never competed at the national tournament losing a match like that in the quarters and you drop down and you got to wrestle again, Friday night, right? And you're still not on the podium. I mean, I've dealt with it. I know how hard that is, but I wasn't even I wasn't a favorite in the quarters kind of thing. What was that day like? How did you kind of get your head wrapped around and moved forward from what happened Friday morning to get yourself ready to get right back on a roll and, get right back on the horse and really just start scoring points and beating people up on the backside?
Yeah. I mean, especially, losing the way I did, obviously, it was, all over the internet, big thing. I mean, and then it's like, okay, there's that first part where you're thinking, all right, how do I accept this? And then, but eventually I think it just hit me like, all right, there's legitimately nothing I can do now. Still got matches to wrestle. I knew we had the team race, and, it wasn't just about me. It was about my teammates and scoring as many points as I could for them. But I would say the way that I handled it is I was just like, I'm not even thinking about anything, but I'm going to go out and just wrestle and let it fly and score points. And almost like, that's all I really could do. I could have sat back and said, I didn't get what I wanted and that's it. But I don't know. There's just a certain level of pride there where I was like, I'm stepping on the mat, so I got to represent myself and I got to represent my team. But yeah, it's definitely one of the tougher things I've had to do. Not just physically, but mentally too. So, but yeah, I think that's something too that I can use going into this year. No matter what happens, during a match or whatever the circumstances are, just being able to put that stuff aside and just go out and wrestle. I think that can help me a lot.
Yeah, like you said, looking forward to this year. Obviously, you and Jason Nolf are going to be the top dogs at 157. You two have probably been wrestling your whole life, I would assume, both from Pittsburgh, and I think you guys have wrestled at the same club. And I know you just said in the last question that you're not big on focusing on your opponent, really just doing the things that you need to do, which is a great mindset. But when you think about you and Nolf's history and how you guys will probably wrestle quite a few more times, how do you? What's your approach to trying to close the gap on this guy?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, there's a lot of guys in wrestling, college wrestling, international wrestling. You look at international wrestling, and you had Sajalayev. He's the big guy, and it's like, how do you beat a guy like that? And Kyle Snyder went out and he wrestled to win that match. He wrestled to take it to him and went to win, and it shocked a lot of people, but people that knew him, I think that they thought for sure that he could win. And so just the way to look at that is he's kind of like the guy right now, and you see him, he's all over Flow and everything, and it's good, but I'm not going out there to close the gap and keep it close against anybody. I feel confident in my stuff going out there and wrestling hard and letting it fly and wrestling to beat a guy. And just because a guy's a certain name, I'm still going out there to beat that guy. So that's the biggest thing, though, I think, is just going out and I know it's a tough opponent, but doing what I do and just not holding back. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people take for granted, is just getting the most out of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And to widen the scope a little bit, to go from just you personally to your team as a whole, I know obviously we all know the Iowa program is one that, you guys aren't just trying to be in the top 5 every year. You guys are trying to win a national title each and every year. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier. You said you guys have a young, your team's got a young look to it and everything. And, rankings are what they are, and you guys maybe aren't as high as most people are used to seeing you in preseason rankings. Is there any sort of a different feel, a different mindset because there's a young team? Do you guys feel like you have more to prove this season, or is it just kind of business as usual?
Yeah, I think really we're a young team, but the standard's still the same. I mean, a lot of it, you look at a lot of it is just depends on guys filling those roles that guys had before. I mean, we lose, Gilman, Clark, Brooks, those guys like that, and it's just going to take guys stepping up and holding that same standard. Whereas, I mean, it's a lot of new faces, but I don't think we look at it like, oh, we're at a disadvantage and this is an off year or anything like that, because I mean, if you're holding the same standard that the program holds, then just because you're a freshman or a sophomore or whatever, some of our younger guys that are coming to the lineup doesn't mean that we change the way we wrestle and change the way we compete and train and everything. So, I mean, I would say that really it's just about upholding that standard. So yeah, we got some young guys, but I mean, we're excited to do that.
How big is it that you guys picked up Pat Lugo transferring in from Edinburgh? I think he's a 2-time blood rounder now. Looks like he might redshirt this season, but he's pretty close to your weight. Is that got to be a pretty good workout partner for you coming in there right around the middle weights?
Yeah, he's a great workout partner. I mean, I think he fits in great with just the team overall, and then wrestling with him is good. I mean, he brings a little bit of different style, and he's tough. I mean, he's a tough kid, so it's good. I mean, it always helps us. For us to, get back on top, we got to have a real tough room and keep building that room, and I think he helps us a lot with that. So yeah, it's definitely good to have him.
So to go back a little bit, pre Iowa days, one of the things that that neither one of Tristan or I got to be part of that I've always kind of been curious about. So who's number one's coming up? I think next weekend. Yeah. And I remember you getting to be part of that. I might have been the first one.
Yep.
What was kind of just take us through your memories of that and what that experience and everything around it was like. Cause that's something I've always been curious about. I was pretty lucky with the places I got to wrestle, but that wasn't one of them.
Yeah. I thought that event was awesome. I mean, I was just talking to someone the other day, about it coming up again. And I was like, man, that was a cool event. I don't know if, even in the moment, I realized how awesome that was, but I know I for sure enjoyed it. Just, I mean, the way they did it too, like we had all the interviews and the pictures that we took, and just the way they hyped it up, it was almost like we were on a UFC card or something like that. And just for a high school kid to, get that spotlight, it was awesome. And then, I mean, the atmosphere was awesome. I mean, I loved where they had it there, and the Snake Pit. I thought that was great. I just thought they handled it really well, and it keeps evolving. Obviously, they keep adding stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was a great event, especially just because, before the season, it's just a good way to, you kind of starting off wrestling those best guys, and then after that, it kind of set the rankings for the rest of the year. So, I mean, it was good too, because, I think now, guys know if they're at the top of those rankings, then they're going to get a crack at that number one spot. And I know before that, maybe they're, in high school, the guys would go to different tournaments where one guy would go to Super 32 and one guy would go to Fargo. So, maybe the top two guys would never wrestle, where now you're seeing that a lot more. And so, I mean, I just think it's a great event.
Do you think something like that, like you mentioned with all the hype surrounding it, with the interviews and the coverage, do you think something like that helps a high school junior, senior that maybe is from, as Pennsylvania kids, we're kind of spoiled with the coverage we get, but do you think that would help a kid from maybe an off-color state, get a feel for what a really big stage like that is like, kind of moving on before, like, to get ready for college kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way wrestling is it's a lot of open tournaments and all that stuff's great, and winning those big brackets, but you don't see a lot. I feel like you don't see a lot of that high school level, really, just that spotlight and like how much attention it is on those individual matches. So I feel like seeing that, it's just, I feel like it's great for the sport, because I mean, it's different than kids that are used to sitting in a gym, for a whole weekend all day and wrestling a couple matches. I mean, it's quick like a dual meet, and it's matching up all those big names, and I mean, like I said, it's almost like a UFC fight card or something like that. So, I mean, I think it's definitely just another good way to, get more attention to the sport, and, it makes it more fun for everyone for sure. I mean, I thought that event was great, and just being a part of it, I knew that it was something that, and no one would turn that down unless they had an injury or something like that. But I thought it was a great event.
Yeah, and I guess my last real question I had in my head, looking forward to this coming season. You guys wrestle at Penn State in Bryce Jordan. Is that going to be your first duel back home in Pennsylvania?
Actually, I wrestled at Edinburgh for the national duels last year, but yeah, this would be the other one. Obviously, that's a bigger arena than Edinburgh's facilities, but not a knock on them. But yeah, this will be my first time wrestling in State College. Yeah.
Okay, I just a stage like that, in the Bryce Jordan Center, obviously, with you and Jason, but just with everything. Do you think getting to wrestle at home, or I should say getting to wrestle in your home state, does that add any extra value for you? You get a little more excited for those type of duels, not just because of the guys you get to wrestle, but to be able to come closer to home, and I'm sure it's easier for family and friends to come see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's real cool for my family and friends and everybody. I mean, from a preparation standpoint, I mean, I still, stick to my routine and do the same things that I do, but just having those opportunities, I mean, it's awesome. It's something I'm looking forward to, and then I'll get to look back on, just all the places that wrestling's taken me. It's taken me out here, so out in Iowa, maybe a lot of people that maybe don't get to see me wrestle as much anymore, they get that opportunity, and I'm sure it's going to be a great environment. So, yeah, I mean, I would say preparing, I always try to keep a level head and kind of stay pretty calm about that stuff, but at the same time, definitely happy for, everyone, all my family and friends that get to come out and see that, and definitely adds some excitement to it.
Well, Mike, we're proud of you out back here in Pennsylvania. I just wanted to say best of luck to you this upcoming season. Everyone back here is still proud of you, even if you're repping the black and gold. So good luck, and hopefully we'll see you high on the podium. So we'll see how high you can get this year, and best of luck to you.
Yep, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, and now, as always, we're going to preview one of our Pennsylvania college wrestling teams. I think we've hit all, if not most, if not all, of our teams still in D1 in Pennsylvania, but one of the few left that we still have not done is Bucknell, the Bucknell Bison out of Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Couple key returners for Bucknell, for Coach Wernsberger coming back. Starting at 141, Tyler Smith. He's a guy we spent, maybe like 30 minutes of one of our earlier podcasts talking about, just his sheer grit and how much we like watching him wrestle. He was a round of 12, or a.k.a. blood round finisher at 141 this past year. Gave Dean Heil all he could handle in the, second round? No, that was
Acro.
That was Acro. But
yeah.
Smith has wrestled top-level guys to incredible matches where he's almost pulled it out at the end, and he's obviously beaten his fair share of studs to get to the round of 12. He comes into the season ranked 9th in the country at 141. I think he's a senior now. They got Garrett Hoffman, a national qualifier at 184 returning, and Tom Slay, a national qualifier at 197 returning. Slay's got to be ranked up there now, I would think, as well. He's been around for a while. Other than that, we got Joey Gold, probably be at 133. He was a state champ from Bethlehem Catholic 2 or 3 years ago, and had a decent showing for a freshman at those lighter weights. So he'll be in the mix there. And then Jacob Campbell, who was a pretty tough kid from Boyertown, couple-time state placer, I think even a state finalist, will probably be their 25-pounder. Other notable guys from PA, Zach Valley from Northampton. He was also a state finalist, I believe. He'll be around in the lightweights, maybe in the 33 or 41 range, whichever one Gold doesn't go. So definitely some tough guys coming back for Bucknell. Also some weights with some question marks, though.
Yeah, so Slay, to answer your question about Slay's rank, he's ranked 15th by Flow. at 197. So that's a dude right there that obviously has put himself in a conversation, to make a run and get himself on the podium. Another notable thing with Bucknell is they have an absolutely beautiful new facility that just, I don't know if this will be their first or second year in it. I want to say this will be their first season in it. But when they had the Bison System duels out there, I was out coaching the club I help with a couple of months, about a month or two ago, and wandered off and looked through their new facility. Man, it's gorgeous. So, always good to see a program like, any program get some new digs, make the athletes a little bit more comfortable, give them a more positive training environment. You ran through all the names, got a lot of tough guys, a lot of Pennsylvania guys on this roster, and they've had a bunch of commitments this summer from some Pennsylvania studs. So, looks like they're building towards something, really starting to build. With Coach Wernsberger, Coach LaValle, a guy that was probably, you got to say, one of the best Bucknell guys ever, right?
Yeah, that's right. And he's doing a good job as a coach, too, I think. I mean, they've had a lot of tough guys coming through their program in the light middle, upper middle weights. So, good training partner for those guys. Guys like Tyler Smith and guys even a little bit bigger, too, I'm sure, that LaValle works with, that he's molding into some pretty tough guys for the Bison.
Yeah, so, Bucknell, always a solid program. They're always a team that has some big wins, during the year. They'll find a way to win a dual meet that's maybe a little bit surprising on paper. So
feisty, I would even say, maybe. A couple times at Old Dominion we wrestled Bucknell, and one or two times I think we went in there thinking we were going to come out with a win, and they beat us. And then a couple other times we ended up winning, but I mean, it was a fight, and it was on paper it should have been a blowout, and it wasn't. So those guys are always wrestling hard, and they're a feisty team.
Hang on. Did winning.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, grammar mistakes aside. So yeah, that's pretty much the long and the short of things.
Hoping nobody heard that, but you had to call it out. So.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fair. That's fair.
So that's pretty much the long and the short of things with Bucknell. And I think with that, that's pretty much all we got for you. So, as ever, thank you guys for joining us. If there's anything you want, anything you guys want us to cover, any stories, throw them at us. We might have an interesting one for you next week with a current athlete who's trying to make himself into a rapper. So that's a potential interest story for next week. Something to stay tuned for. If we can get a little more information on it. But as always, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope this hour plus of rambling and tangents has been enjoyable for you.
And dad jokes everywhere.
Hey, I am a Pat Santoro product, and there's nobody that's got more dad jokes than Coach Santoro. Spend 5 minutes around the guy, and you will have heard every joke he has. So, love him to death, and they're always funny because he thinks they're funny. So,
and that's really all that matters.
That is dad jokes in a nutshell. So anyway, one last time, thank you guys for tuning in. Mikey Kemerer, thank you for joining us. Awesome interview. Really looking forward to see what Mikey as well as Caleb Young can do out there in the lineup for the Hawkeyes. And until next time, guys, appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in.
As Mason said, that's going to wrap it up for us at the PA Power College Podcast. As always, thanks for dialing in. I'm Tristan Warner. Find me on Twitter at WarnTriz. And Mason Beckman, you can find him on Twitter at Beck_Diggity. Fans, visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle and friend us on Facebook. Until next time, stay classy, wrestling fans.